Peace and blessings, Soul Fam. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Today, this is going to be the SONZ Youth podcast because we are talking to Trevor Spring. We are having our first in-person SONZ Youth Convergence July 7th through 10th at Liberty Arising near San Diego, California. The SONZ Youth Convergence is a contemporary rites of passage experience for young men ages 11 to 19 to mark and celebrate their step towards manhood and community into sacred space. This is huge for us as Sacred Sons. A lot of the work that we're doing, a lot of the men's work, the masculine alchemy has really led us back to our inner child, our inner children as men, and then also given us the inspiration and now bringing into reality the youth mentorship and what that means to raise strong young men. And so with that, our guest today, he's a men's coach with 15 plus years experience. He's a youth mentor. He's a dedicated husband and father, and he is the director of the SONZ Youth Mentorship Program. Please welcome Trevor Spring.
What's up, Adam?
What's up, Trevor? Good to see you, my brother.
Amen.
You know, I gotta say, we're on episode 99 here.
Woo.
And you were on episode 3, all the way back from Liberty when we actually recorded in person.
Oh my God. How has it all changed so much and stayed so much the same, actually? Yeah, and just deepened.
It's deepened, it's expanded, and now we are honored truly to bring through our first in-person weekend. How does it feel for you, the energy building towards this monumental offering?
Oh, man, I'm getting blown open by doing this, by holding the energy of making this come to fruition, like to really harvest all that we've built as a men's community, as a community of people with strong intention, like to be stewarding this energy, because I'm not making it happen, but I'm helping it to happen. And I've never worked with this kind of energy before in my life. I've never worked with this kind of transformative, service-based, like contribution kind of energy, and brought so many people together to share in that. So it's just blowing my heart open, and my mind at times too, because it's a lot, it's a big, it's an event. And so yeah, I'm in so much anticipation to be in the desert with the men and the young men, and to send the parents, say thank you and goodbye to the parents, and then kind of turn towards the container. Man, it's going to be so special. These things have been happening since the beginning of humans. And my sense is that because it's connected to the medicine and the alchemy and the brotherhood of sacred sons, that this is going to have a really unique signature to it, like, experientially. Not to say like, oh, this has never happened before, because that would be, egocentric in a way. And that's not where I'm coming from. But like, this is going to be a unique signature because of what we're connected to as a community. And just so honored to be part of it. Yeah,
I think it's also unique because of the times we're in. And so there's a big, for me, there's a level of responsibility in showing up to this that is just, it's not that it's heavy. It's just that we're taking it seriously because of these times. Many of these young men, everyone having gone through the pandemic, but many of these young men growing up at a time with challenges, both technologically and virtually and practically, that, it kind of takes that mentorship from a brotherhood like us who has the experience. These emergent ways that we're showing up as mentors for young men. In many ways, it is going to be new.
Mm-hmm.
Just as it's been happening for thousands of years. And this is the first time we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get into all the things SONZ Youth Convergence. Before we do, I want to invite us to take a deep breath for ourselves. Anyone listening along, please take a big deep breath in through the nose. Scanning the body, feeling what is alive and present. Trevor, on this beautiful day in Oahu, Hawaii, what is alive in your heart, brother?
I'm hearing the cardinals calling outside my window and seeing the morning sun shining. And I've got a tremendous amount of gratitude. I had a great night with my daughter last night, climbing and watching her expand in ways that that I've never seen her, grow and expand. One-on-one time with kids is just like so precious. And so I'm just coming out of, we were out late, climbing at the gym till late. And then came back across the mountain to Kailua, got some, a little dinner, and it just like filled my heart up so much. Just that kind of connection. So in addition to that, lots of family time, lots of growth, lots of growing into this event, and lots of like, really growing into my own role as a father, as a partner, and as a man in this community and my community here in Oahu. So deeply filled with gratitude and juggling all the things and doing that dance to stay in integrity with all the things, because it's dynamic and these are dynamic times. And so yeah, gratitude and juggling. I'm in.
Yeah. Thank you, Trevor. Adam checking in. I'm preparing in my own way for my own little youth convergence as I'm preparing to take my family back east to the Midwest, and I'm getting together with my family, with my brother and his 5 kids, me with my 3 kids. So we're gonna have all the Jackson cousins together, and so like, just thinking about facilitating, what does that look like? I moved away from my home. Like I moved away when I was 27 to California. I've been out here for almost 15 years. And so we don't get some of that magic, that cousin magic. I don't know if you had it, but when I was a kid, I had tons of cousins, and there's something about knowing that you're blood and playing together and all of the fun that comes with that. So I'm holding space for that and looking forward to that. And then also just to see my brother, and be with him and really dropping in. I say the word brother a lot in my life, in my everyday life. So to be with my blood brother, my older brother, who took me to my first shows, who I used to wear his old clothes, taught me how to skateboard, all of the things. Shout out to Jesse. Just looking forward to having some hang time with my blood brother. You know what I mean?
I do.
I'm in with that.
I do, brother. Thanks, my friend.
All right, Trevor. So as I said, we are gearing up July 7th through 10th. We're going to be out in JACUMBA. You have now led, how many pods of the Youth Mentorship Program have you led so far?
Well, we've had 9. We just sent off, we just launched number 9 yesterday. 16 boys, 6 mentors, and then myself on the opening call yesterday. And it's been 9. I've been in 7 of them. So this is the second one that I won't be leading because I'm prepping for the in-person event, and we have teams of beautiful, skilled, trained, background checked, prepared, lead mentors and volunteers leading these groups right now. And it's it's such a beautiful space. It's virtual, that we activated at the beginning of COVID, right? And we were like, hey, this is kind of a time for evasive maneuvers. We need to get creative here and get into the youth, because this is where we can reach them back, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is where the terrain we've been operating in and optimizing and really leaning into for the last 2 years. And it's been amazing. We've made such a huge impact.
So for someone who's maybe tuning into this for the first time, what is unique about our SONZ Youth offering? And like, what is the program? I often say, like, we're not tying knots and riding in canoes.
Mm-hmm.
Although those things, no knock on those things, but that's not the focus of why we're bringing these young men together. So what is the focus of our youth mentorship?
Yeah, great. Great metaphors. I love it, because I love those things too. I love riding in I hope to ride in canoes
Yes.
with boys when it's time for that. We are working on that too. But the idea is, it's just like in the men's containers, we're not just boxing and hiking.
Right.
The idea is that we can do, once we establish a different kind of connection, a different kind of call to connection and presence and integrity with ourselves and with each other, that changes anything else that we do. The tying knots and canoes and all those things, it happens inside a different context. So what we are doing is we're making containers that are sincere, that are safe, that are playful and honest. And we're inviting these young men into that space, and constantly it's like a recurring thing to see the young men, how quickly they open up in a sense of like, relief, that some part of them has been knowing that they need this kind of like transparency, honesty, sincerity from men.
Yeah.
And so we're forming containers where that's possible. And then we can do anything. Then we can circle up. Then we can talk about emotions. Then we can talk about relationships and romance and all the things that come up for young men. All the inevitable challenges that they face from 11 to 19, driving, college, job, romance, vaping, parties, like all the inevitable things that come onto their path. Then we can hit all the things in a sincere way, in a place where they can bring anything to our community. And we'll do all the fun things like tying knots and canoes eventually, but it's in this very sacred context. So we're introducing them to sacred space. And I say, let's keep it sacred in the agreements every time. And I think of you every time I do it.
Yes.
Really do, because that's really your line. And we're introducing them to sacred space. So that's my long answer.
Yeah. And, I was a part of the very first youth cohort online. And one of my biggest takeaways was, it's so important for these young men to have a safe place to ask questions. Simply that. Like, ask questions about what's happening, ask questions about what's real. And we don't have to pretend like young boys aren't exploring. And like you mentioned, the vaping and other things. And I'm still to this day connected to a couple of those young men and their parents. And what I wanted to say here is, it takes a lot of trust from the parents to allow their young boys to go off into the care of these mentors, right? And so you also have quest calls along with the program, where the parents are able to be involved and to check in on the progress and also ask questions. And I was sitting with one of our Sacred Sons brothers recently. Shout out to Ugo Chacon. And he was relaying to me how much trust it even takes for him. And he knows us, right? Like he's been with us for many years, and how much trust it takes for him to allow his young boys, to enter that transition to manhood alongside of mentors. So I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about the parents' role in all of this.
Well, the parents' role is also very dynamic, because parents stepping into this, or bringing their son into this, or the young man that they're in care of, into this work, is they're asking for their own medicine in a way. Because when a young person changes and catches you by surprise with how they act, suddenly as a parent or a care provider, you're met with like, oh, well, what do I do now? And then you're going to be forced to grow. It's going to be required just in the moment, So parents are asking for their own growth and evolution, and it's actually very brave of them to step into this and say, I believe there's something more. I've had a few discovery calls for parents about the convergence. We just had one last weekend, and shout out to the parents that were there. Thank you. It's just such a deeply settling space for parents, because parents have so many questions, and for them to ask all the questions until they've sensing the way that they felt when they came in versus when they left is one of the best feelings that I experience, is parents feeling deeply reassured and deeply trusting. So what parents are stepping into is a deeper vision, a bigger vision of what's possible for their son, and a desire for connection and growth.
Yeah. And specifically the quest calls, as I mentioned, I'm still in contact with some of the boys from the original cohort, and these quest calls have now been going for some years, which is really amazing to continue to expand this community as we invite new young men and parents in. And so could you just tell me a little bit about what those calls entail and what you're personally receiving from them?
Yeah. So, I think it's important to say that the way the young men land in our community is through the 8-week virtual cohort.
Yes.
And they drop into this 8-week container, and it's 2 times a week for 8 weeks. And it's a closed container, right? There's 10 to 15 boys or young men. There's 10 to 15 young men and 6 mentors traveling together for 2 Zoom calls a week. And we hit all the foundational aspects of healthy masculinity during those 8 weeks. We play, we have fun, we do some calisthenics on Fridays. It's epic. It's incredibly intimate. And then once they come out of that, they go into the Quest program, which is our continuation program. And now that we're 9 cohorts in, that's starting to become the body of our organization, of our community, because our last 3 calls were over 20 people. That's where all the young men from all the cohorts can come to any call, and we do 2 or 3 of those calls a month. All the men that were trained, all the mentors can come to that call. So every container is different. Every container has new energy to it, and that spark. And there's something about consistency and continuity for young men where they build this deep trust. And I've seen so many of the young men that have been with us for 2 years now come in every Quest call.
Yeah.
And they're now just leading that leader energy that can only come from repetition.
Yes.
And inhabiting your space in the community. And that's not something that young men have. I mean, just that is a major impact on a young man's development. And I do have a great testimonial that speaks directly to that we can get to.
We'll get to after I ask you this next question. So I want to come to the specifics here, because I'm a dad. All right. So what can I expect my young man to get from this program? He's going in one way. What should I expect? How should I expect him to come out? You mentioned the term healthy masculinity. I think this is huge for a lot of parents, because I get DMs and emails from single mothers. They're saying, I don't have the tools to raise my young boy into a man. How can I raise my son so that he is in the healthy masculine versus this so-called toxic masculinity? So what's the proof that you have, or what are some of those key pieces I can expect to get out of him?
The first thing that comes up, man, is that, and there's no guarantees, right? We can't go into working with the youth and be like, well, we're going to turn them into little robots that we want them to be, because they will never comply to exactly what we think we want. But I can almost guarantee that the young men that go through this program are going to look you in the eye. Sustained connection, which is like, right, it's a bandwidth thing, the way I see it. It's like young men can sustain connection and presence in connection with people, which is something that in my witnessing was lost. A lot of that was diminished through COVID, and that boys, young men, their capacity for connection was diminished and compromised. And that what I'm seeing after 2 years of running this program and staying connected to the boys for the long term, and some of them just through the 8-week cohort, there's major change. And then also through the Quest program, there's even bigger change when they stay connected to the community. It's not just like a one-off. The capacity.
I think that's key. This is key. But this is not a one-off weekend where you go off and you have a big bang experience and then it's over and you never hear from these mentors again.
No.
That we have the structure to maintain the consistency of that level of relating and communication.
I have men waking up in the middle of the night in Europe to come to these Quest calls. 2 a.m.
Yeah.
There's a man in Turkey who was on 2 calls ago, and he was like, man, I need to wake up in the middle of the night more to come and do these things. So I think it just speaks to the impact of like, this is not a one-off. We're here and we're sitting here with our doors open and we're going, no shame, but like, come on back. Even if you step away, come back. We're here for the rest of your life because you've gone through this, because you've stepped in with us. We're here with open arms. I still text boys from our first cohort. Every Quest call, I still hit them up with a text. And maybe they're like, oh, this guy's still texting me. Or maybe they're like, wow, okay, that's still like, they're still there. And maybe they'll come back. And I've had young men come back and they look like different people because it's like a year later. And I'm like, whoa, this one young man in particular, and was like, whoa, you just grew so much in this last year. So that's the big thing about the Quest program and about this in general. What we're doing is that we're here with open doors and we're here anchored and we're not going anywhere. And to me, that's a big deal because it's like a beacon, a place of safety in a young man's life, subconsciously even.
And I love that you said this is an opportunity for authentic connection.
Mm-hmm.
It may not seem like it, but this is a time where that's a big deal. Because as you said, the opportunities for connection, it's not that it got suppressed. It wasn't possible over these last couple of years. So yes, getting some eye contact, having a young man get into a space where he can be honest, maybe for the first time in a while like that. I feel like that's huge. And, you have worked with, are we getting close to 100 young men at this point?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So let's hear from one of them. Let's hear one of the testimonials, if you don't mind, just so the listeners can get an understanding of like the impact that this work is having on these young men.
Yeah. So this is one of the mothers from cohort 6, and her son has been coming back to the community consistently. Last time I texted him for the Quest call, I'm like, you come into the Quest call, it happens in 90 minutes. And he's like, it. And it's just like, yeah, okay, I've got that kind of like trust. So what she said is, I've been seeing such a positive change in my son. He's been waking up early, meditating, doing the dishes, drawing more, following a schedule, etc. I told myself it has to be the SONZ group. Thank you so much for everything you do. You're making a really positive ripple effect. Much love. And those aren't things that we told this young man to do. And he's 12. He's not 18. He's 12. That's not because we're challenging him to do those things. Those are on his own accord. And those are all things that I know from knowing him that are in alignment with him, with his like highest expression, and that he's choosing them on his own. So to me, that speaks to the impact of the consistency of showing up to this container and not looking at it as a one-off, and just staying in that sustained connection with these young men. And maybe the sustained connection is with us, but maybe it's also with the parents, or maybe it's also with their friends in their community. So much of this goes unmeasured of the impact of it. But that capacity for sustained connection is transformative, because when connection stays open, so much more can move in than when a young man's isolated and shut down and not receptive.
Yeah, and maybe that sustained connection comes through the mentorship, through the parents, or through the friendships. I know so many men in our Sacred Sons community who have blasted off because they simply have more friends, Trevor. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we do a lot of amazing things, but like, there's nothing better than friendship, like true friendship. Do some of these young men stay connected in that way as well?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful part of this, and of it being started through virtual channels. There's no barriers there. They can be connected at any time. They can drop in for a conversation. They can drop into the Discord, which we have this Discord community where there's a general chat, and then there's specific chats for each cohort. So they can drop in with their cohort they went through the 8 weeks with at any moment, and someone will pop back onto the chat and respond.
That's
so
huge.
We're always there.
That's huge, because we're leveraging the technology, utilizing the technology as a tool. That is something to consume your son, but it's something that can be a positive kind of reinforcement that, oh, hey, I have some people over here that care about me, that will respond to me, versus the void of the internet, which is a bunch of strangers that don't care, right? And so being able to, the technology's here, whether we like it or not. I've said before, many of these young men have better gaming chairs and systems than I do when we tune in on these cohorts. And so they're very comfortable in that space and in that virtual space, but giving them a tool where it's like real connection, authentic relating, versus going into the void of the internet. I think this is a huge piece.
Yeah, because going into that world, into their world of the internet, is a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And, it's just like the canoeing and knot tying thing we're talking about. We're also talking about gaming together, because a lot of these young men go and they game together, but when they meet up in a game after they've been in the quest calls or a cohort, and then they connect in a game, they have that sincerity, the integrity of connection that we establish in our groups, and then they bring that out into their gaming world. And my opinion is that it's a completely different experience, where they're not as like they're not as disembodied. Like they stay connected to themselves. They stay trusting of the people they're with when there is that kind of thread woven through their experience.
So there's a huge energy swirling in the collective right now because of some of the atrocities and some of the tragedies that are happening in the world at the hands of our youth. And so, just like on a personal level, what does it mean for you to be doing this work in this way? Again, not with the illusion that we're here as saviors to save anyone, but there's real things happening out in the world. And I like to believe, like, this is a part, my role in Sacred Sons. This is a part of the offering of the solution of our version of that. You know what I'm saying? So what does it mean to you personally knowing that there are many paths these young men can go down, but they're choosing, and their parents are helping to choose this sacred path. How does that impact you personally when you kind of feel into the emotions of what's happening in the collective?
I cry all the time about this.
Yeah.
I get emotional about this all the time.
Yeah.
Because there's a grief associated with this work for me, because in this lifetime, I'll never get it to where I want it to be, essentially. And so there's a lot of like, okay, well, I'm still just going to do the best I can and do my part in this community, in connection. So it hits me with I get hit with grief pretty often, actually.
Yeah.
And it's here right now. I could just bust out crying, which you've seen me do, talking about this.
It's real. It's real.
Yeah. So I get hit with a lot of grief, because I guess because the implications are so, I was going to say earlier in the conversation, like the stakes are so high.
Yes.
Especially at this age, because it's such like a tenuous moment for their development. And it's also tenuous because of like COVID and all the world paradigm and how things have become over this last year. And, we just saw this with the school shooting, and, so there's so much to be done, and that feels like overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
The scale of the challenge. And there's no bigger joy, like for me, to be, constructing this bridge back to youth, back to these young men. So there's few bigger joys in life for me, and I'm totally honored. And it's heavy.
And I also know that these are confidential spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had experiences that are the realest of the real. Just let me tell you, I just want to say, like, it's not all getting in touch with our emotions and rainbows and butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's like helping a youth and his parents navigate getting rid of illegal substances. Like that's something I've really dealt with within our community. And have you seen some kind of signs of like, wow, this actually can reach them. This can actually get them when they're in a decision point. Should I go, this way or that way? And let's, I don't like to use right and wrong that often, but like, man, in the life of a young man, there really are good and bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so have you seen the impact of like when a young man gets to a point and he's able to make good decisions?
Yeah, I've seen young men pivot off of the path of, there's like a path that's like a vicious spiral, or there's like a virtuous spiral, right? The vicious spiral like goes inward on itself, and the virtuous spiral goes outward.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I've seen young men pivot off of the path of the vicious spiral, and slowly, little by little, with consistent small choices, completely pivot the energetics of their way of being, where like they were going towards, heading towards jail, essentially, that kind of energy, or wherever it would be, or addiction, or violence, self-violence, those kind of things, where they were energetically heading there. And then I've perceived that because of this sustained connection, they just see life different, and they see possibilities that they wouldn't otherwise even be attuned to.
Yeah.
And they can be, because it's a different vibration. It's a different, like, type of energetic, and they're able to tap into these places of connection and life path that weren't even accessible by this other consciousness. So yeah, I've seen it. and a great example is young men from the community reaching out on the quest call and saying, hey, can you stay and talk for a couple minutes afterwards? Sure.
Yes, exactly.
And then them showing up to the conversation and saying, hey, I really want to learn to do what you do. I really want to learn to be a facilitator. Like, I feel like this is, I don't know how that looks, but I feel like that's something that I want to like lead in the groups. Great. To stop and ask for advice, or ask for support, or ask to be witnessed. And I'm just so honored to see them advocate for their higher self. It's moving, not just be led by me or by other people, but to advocate for what they feel. And I talk about that when I intro the young men into like the first conversation I'll have with a young man, when they're like, what is this program? What is this 8-week cohort? And they're coming in with kind of like eyebrows down and kind of like, whatever. My mom's telling me to do this. And I'll say, look, this is about trusting your intuitive compass. Do you know what I mean by that? And most of them say yes. So they know what that means. And then I'll also explain it. What that means is that part of you, those signals from your body that you just trust and you know are true. Yeah. And that you can trust that part of yourself, so that you don't need to rely on me or your mom or anyone else to tell you how to live. And so that's what we want these young men to get out of this program, is that they trust their intuitive compass. They trust their right and wrong, or left or right, or stop or go impulses, more than they trust like what other people say. And I've seen that in action. And so that's really what this is about.
And I love this piece around these young men being exposed to unlimited possibility. You know what I mean? I feel like because of the last couple of years, many of these guys come in a box, and especially, I mean, to bring them out to Liberty Arising, into the desert, under the stars. It was just out there for a new moon. The stars were incredible. It just kind of like opens you up to the infinite possibilities of what this life has to offer. And then there's also a piece where like these young men won't need to seek validation through some of the more typical behaviors that you tend to see in high schools, right? Because they have these really amazing mentors who are validating them for their own authentic brilliance, and that sense of authenticity for themselves, right? That sense of like, I'm starting to begin to understand who I am, how I feel, what I like, how I relate. And I don't have to go those other ways to prove anything to anyone. You know what I mean? Like I think that's big for a young man. Do you feel that?
It's so affirming for them, in my judgment, in my opinion. It's so affirming for them to witness men be themselves, and witness men be self-trusting, self-loving, self-affirming, and to be transparent about who they are, and trust themselves enough to be that way, and represent it unapologetically in these groups, and honestly, guard down. And so this is a great segue. I'd like to read another testimonial.
Yeah.
It's about the impact of them being around men who are being themselves, and letting the young men see that. And it's about that self-trust. So this is from a mother in our community. She said, "I'm so glad we found your program in January 2021. Having strong and emotionally attuned men to look up to has been, all caps, huge for my son's growth. I'm so excited to see what my beautiful son does in the world. Thank you!" Exclamation. Right? And emotionally attuned men to look up to. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple.
It's that simple, and it's missing. It's missing in the way that we've crafted our culture up to this point. Yep. And I love how simple it is, to be honest. Because if you were over here telling me it's rocket science and we're going to do all these things, and yes, you have to have this type of initiation for a young man to be someone in this world, I would kind of get lost in that. Right. But the simplicity with what you're telling me and what's working is how I know I can trust it.
It is simple. It's just being more human together. It's like, let's just do that.
Let's just do that. Yeah. All right. So you shared about how some of the youth get excited about being exposed to this work and seeing you as a facilitator, and I've had similar reflections. And so it opens the door for these mentors to come in. And so we have some amazing brothers from the Sacred Sons community who have been on this path to mentorship. And they've specifically chosen, I want to focus attention on the youth, because maybe that's the piece that was missing for them in their life, or that's where they feel their services are best utilized. So these mentor trainings, we've been doing these for a couple of years now. How has it been for you to guide and train these mentors who are going to be holding space and who have been holding space for these young men?
It is so satisfying. And I'll tell you why. It's because there's a certain medicine that I believe that men need, that all men in our culture need. And this mentor training allows me to support them to get that medicine, or at least the first introduction to that medicine that I believe that all men need. And I've said before that this is like a biological imperative for men to give back into the community in a way. And some men, it's through men's work, and some men, it's through youth work. But there's a particular thing with youth in the way it hits. So it's been very satisfying, because the youth have this, they have a radar, they have a bullshit meter.
Yeah.
And they will not tolerate you performing. They will not tolerate you acting like, you're some kind of savior or some kind of hero or some kind of like, I got it all figured out. And so it like literally eliminates men coming in and trying to act like they're special and act like the king that they, it's like, it forces men to like get down and be humble and be like human and connected. Yes. and available and present, and like it forces men to sustain that connection, that presence, that attunement, that availability. And so there's some kind of alchemical cycle that happens in this process where the men grow in ways that they can't grow through working with men. They can't.
Yeah.
The youth work is unique. And so our trainings are, we do our trainings virtually, like on a logistical sense. We do our trainings virtually. It's a half-day training. We do background checks, and we also do personal references, so that we have this like pretty three-dimensional model for getting clear on the quality of an individual. And that's for the volunteer level. So these men aren't able to step into leadership in our community until they've been through the paces, and we get to really feel them, and I get to really know who they are and how they work.
Yeah. And why is that? Why is that important to you? I know why it's important to me, but
yeah. Safety, man. Psychological safety, physical safety, trustworthiness. Like, I'm not going to put any man into leadership in this community to be in deep contact with these young men unless I can trust him with like my own family, with my own kids. Yes. Like I have stepkids, I have my own children. Like, I know what that feels like. And so it's about us being patient enough and going through the paces enough together to really know each other and really know what the men that we're putting into leadership in this community, and that we're preparing for leadership. And I like to say that one of the roles, that the way that I've learned to see my role, is that I get to stand on the bridge and keep the portal open for men to turn back towards their young self and do some healing there, because that's what really happens. And that I can prepare men to step through that portal and step through and work with their young self energy and contribute in a meaningful way. And that feeds men in such beautiful, huge ways. Yeah.
And have you come into the situation of having to tell a man, hey, not now, you're not ready. I'm at the point where I don't trust you?
Many times.
Good.
Many times.
Good.
Yeah. And I've had some, conflict energy with men over it, where they want to know why, and and they're hurt and like don't feel comfortable with it, and that's okay with me. Yeah. It's a commitment for me, just like our 1-for-1 commitment, where we scholarship one young man into the community. For every young man who pays, we scholarship every young man in. The other commitment is the highest of integrity for mentors who are in contact with the young men. And we have, as we were starting this is a great example, as we were starting the cohort yesterday, we were meeting with the 3 lead mentors and the 3 volunteer mentors. And one of the lead mentors said, this community, the way we're going to work as a group, is very honest. And so I want you to learn to not take our feedback personally. Don't take it in a cutting way, but take it as an opportunity to grow, because Trevor will be very honest with you. And it might feel hurtful or hard to hear some of the feedback that we're going to give, but it's how we make our community stronger. And I was like, oh, we're doing it. We're getting there. We're establishing a culture where we can be kind and respectful, but brutally honest with each other in order to protect and advocate for the best experience for the young men. And that feels amazing.
Yeah, there's a standard to our leadership, to our mentorship, that has to be held in the highest. You know what I mean? It has to be held, and that's one of the reasons why I love your particular leadership, because you're not afraid to call out the shadow, because you're not afraid to, I will say, like, cut through the bullshit with some radical honesty, with some actual honesty, in a way that's constructive. And I felt that from you in many of the ways that we work together behind the scenes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
thanks, man.
Yeah. And you mentioned the scholarship program. I like to use the words robust scholarship program, because it is. We started, before we had the program, we had the scholarship piece of it sorted out. And so the one-to-one model for every young man and the young man's family who can afford to send them, we fully scholarship another young man who cannot afford it. And I can't say enough what that does for the depth of the diversity, the character, the realness of these containers. So this is not some program where it's a bunch of affluence trouting around. Okay, this is a real container of all different types of young men, all different types of families. And I think that's actually what's needed for these young men to get perspective on the world. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're in your little bubble, then you tend to lack awareness of what's happening on the other side of the country or in a different city. And even with that, what I find so amazing is what happens is these young men, no matter where they're coming from, they find out they're dealing with similar things. The emotional pieces that are coming up from them are really similar. I love to see those moments of connection, and just like, oh, you're dealing with that too over there in Chicago, and I'm out here in San Diego.
And man, this part of it nourishes me so much. And I, the first meetings that we had about this, Adam, where I said, like, this needs to be scholarship in. We need to do it like 1-for-1. And you were so on that level. It wasn't like, oh, there was no like, I don't know, how do we make that happen? It was like F yes. It was like a full yes on that from the jump, and that has meant so much to me, and we've made it happen. What I'm seeing now,
I think we've even gone beyond the 1-to-1.
Oh, this last cohort and the convergence is well beyond 1-for-1, 1-to-1. It's well beyond 1-to-1. And so the scholarship, I just want to invite parents, guardians, to like the scholarship pathway, I would say, is like warmed up and functioning, because we're getting a lot of requests for scholarship into the youth convergence now, and more than ever for the virtual mentoring groups as well, for the 8-week group. So I'm getting so many requests right now, and we can handle it. We got you. So I just want to speak to parents out there and say, if you like, don't shut this idea down because you think that you don't have the money right now. Like, don't just close your mind off. Just go to sonzyouth.org and submit a scholarship application. It's very simple. I'll be in contact, and we will get you in sooner rather than later to one of our programs. And we can do that, and it doesn't cost you anything. And then your young man or boy will be in our community for life. The quest calls you can do, we scholarship most of the young men into the quest calls as well. We do those calls pretty much for free. So I just want to support parents to not shut it down because you think you can't. Because we're here and we're committed to this, and we've got you, we've got him, we've got this.
Yeah, this is this is truly about the ripple of impact, like you were saying earlier. And so I love the fact that the Sacred Sons men's work is funding this. You know what I mean? And not directly and indirectly, through donations from the men who've been with Sacred Sons, but also quite literally, like we're putting Sacred Sons full support behind this mission. Because as Frederick Douglass says, it's easier to raise strong boys than to repair broken men. And anyone who's done the men's work can kind of have an understanding of what that means, and to really feel into that. And so full support for you, Trevor, full support for these families coming into this program. And we're here. We are here.
And I just want to shout out you and Sacred Sons, Adam, because like the community, you as an individual, like, has been so behind this becoming what it is, to pulling off this event in Southern California, to all the ways, like, we're drawing on the wisdom, we're drawing on the manpower, we're drawing on the funding, we're drawing on just the stoke and the planning of Sacred Sons to make this youth thing happen. So just big shout out for the way that you and the community has stepped up to support this, because there's so many men, so many people that have helped to put this into action in a functional way and in funding. There have been so many people who have contributed financially to making these scholarships available for these young men to fly. We're literally flying young men to the event and scholarshiping them into the event. From all around the country, from Hawaii, from the East Coast, from the West Coast, it's happening. And we're flying young men in and scholarshiping them into the event. It's blowing my mind that we have the ability to do this.
Thank you for that reflection. And Spirit is with us. These prayers and intentions are real. We are out here for this work, and Spirit's with us. You know what I'm saying? It's not for me to take responsibility or to fully own that. And I got to be honest, my son Noah's 7. By the time he's 11, I want this SONZ Youth Program all over the country, all over the world, youth camps, running summer camps. I see it. I see it, and I'm here for it. And there's no rush, you know.
Yeah.
Noah's got 4 more years, so we're good. No, but I had, selfishly, I'm like, I also know too, as a father, it's not always going to be me who my children are going to listen to. They will need mentorship from the uncles, and I'm here for this community, so that they have that space that I didn't have when I was a kid, and I imagine you didn't have. No. We create these spaces that we know we needed when we were going through it as a young man. Mm-hmm. And so here we are with this particular SONZ Youth Convergence. Rites of passage are something that I feel like have been lost in the mainstream culture, and we're here to bring those back. So just going to the event itself, let's be real. We're not going to make these boys walk over hot coals. We're not going to put their hands in bullet ants. What are we doing? Give the parents some assurance of what type of initiation is this?
Yeah, that's great. No, we're not hazing the young men. We're not.
This isn't Scared Straight, is it?
No, and it's not like a military camp either, and it's not like a survival camp. So our mission is to support and celebrate the transition from boyhood to manhood. That's what our mission is. You'll see it on the website and all our stuff. Like that's what we're here to do: support and celebrate. And so, we say it's a contemporary rites of passage experience, and I hesitate almost to use rites of passage because there's so many iterations and opinions and interpretations of that. But because this is a contemporary space where this experience is designed to enliven the spirit of a young man and to bring him more deeply into connection with himself and the world around him. That includes the natural world, because it is such an epic natural wild place down in JACUMBA at Liberty. And that includes the mentors and his peers, and then he will have solo time to reflect. So, this is a space where there's no parents, and he gets to sever himself. So that's the traditional path of a rites of passage, right? It's a U shape. There's severance, and there's descent into the underworld, so to speak, where they find these deeper get in touch with these deeper energies of themselves and the world around them. And then there's some kind of challenge there for them to claim and get in connection with those energies. And then there's the ascent back to the living world, right? And then homecoming and an arrival back home. And then the work of integration begins, right? So that's the pathway of a traditional rites of passage. And with this contemporary experience, we're not sending them out into the wild with a spear to kill a wild animal and bring it back to the tribe. We can't do those kinds of experiences, but what we're doing is we're going to bring them in contact and model for them the behavior that we believe is essential in the world today as a man. And so this rite of passage is about activating all of those energies and perspectives in them. The artistic self, right? The wild warrior self, right? The calm, reflective self, the playful, engaged self. We want to bring all these online. And so the young men are going to from the parking lot, the boys will fly in or be driven in, and we'll either shuttle them from the airport, or their parents or guardians will drive them to the parking lot, and then they'll sever from whoever they're with, and they're going to walk with their gear the half mile or so into Liberty. And so that's going to start the transition. We'll have opening ceremonies, and then we'll have a closing ceremony, right? And then we'll send the boys back. We'll drive them back to the airport, etc. But in that space, we're going to have all kinds of celebration and challenge and connection, and celebration and challenge and connection, and celebration and challenge and connection. And the nourishment that's going to come through us eating together, through us hiking together, through us circling up in the simple ways that our brotherhoods functioned since the beginning and that mankind has functioned. These are the things that we innately need to activate the parts of our DNA, to activate the parts of our psyche and our bodies to really be online. And so that's what I want to say. I'm not going to go any more specific than that, that this is about activating the parts of their being that they really need for themselves to be online and engaged in a force of love in the world.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
I think one of the things I'm most looking forward to in terms of the celebration is just sitting around that fire under the stars, you know, having a couple spaces for storytelling, and then passing the guitar and the drums around and hearing what these young men have to sing about, hearing their freestyles, hearing their stories, hearing their poetry, and inviting that in. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a part that as a young man to have these mentors to reflect off of some of the gifts that these kids are bringing. This for me is huge, and I know there's going to be a big emphasis on artistic creation as well as the sacred, but for me it's all sacred. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, and being initiated into sacred space means that they're getting to experience it unfiltered from the Thursday to Sunday. Yeah. It's what we're doing. And to me, that's a major initiation, coming from a fractured society of disconnection and a lot of dysfunction. And to be immersed in that is a major initiation in the psyche of a boy.
Yeah. The SONZ Youth Convergence, July 7th through 10th, 2022, JACUMBA, California. That's near San Diego. It's time. Ages 11 to 19. Trevor, is there anything that you would like to leave with the brothers, sisters, parents, and young men who may be listening?
Yeah. Thank you. Just want to turn to all the people who have trusted us already. Thank you so much for supporting this community and this vision. Thank you to all the parents who have shown up to all the parents' nights, because we hold those as well for parents to grow. Thank you to all the parents who have got on phone calls and sent emails and leaned into doing something different for your young man. So just want to say thank you. And thanks to all the young men who have been with us. And then I just want to ask that people spread the word, man. I want to ask that in the islands here, we have the coconut wireless, which is like the way word spreads when people are connected in real ways and sharing ideas that are meaningful to them. And it just kind of spreads like wildfire through personal connection. So I think it's good to tell people about it, to talk about what you're experiencing. And little by little, we experience a shift in people's perception of what's possible, and they can more easily step into this kind of experience. So spread the word, share, talk about what you're doing, lean in, connect with us, and check it out. Just check it out and see what you find.
Check it out at sonzyouth.org. Trevor, thank you for your leadership and passion, as you have been at the helm of the youth program since its inception, and really bringing the structure that's necessary, the clarity that's necessary, and the experience. That's what this really takes. It really takes someone who's willing and who has that spark lit, and it's not going anywhere else. And that's what I felt from you, the whole way. And so I'm glad to be able to meet you with my gifts, and to, together we rise. This is what we know to be true. So let's go. Let's do it. Let's bring it in for these youth. Let's broadcast this message so that there are spaces all over, like I said, our country and this world, for young men to feel safe to express. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. It's up to us to create those spaces.
Yes.
And if parents don't feel comfortable, they don't know how to create those spaces yet, come connect, because we can support you to get comfortable holding that space in a sustained way, because that's what we do here.
Yeah,
that's what we do, and that's how you've shown up since the beginning, Adam. So big gratitude and honored, man. Thank you.
Yes,
I'll see y'all at the Convergence.
We'll see you out at Liberty Arising, fam. With that, Trevor Spring, Sacred Sons, SONZ Youth Mentorship, Adam Jackson. We'll see you in the desert, fam. Peace.